Good morning, Mr. Wise. How are
Good
you?
morning. How we doing?
We are doing wonderful. We are getting rolling with our latest and greatest installment of the Mortgage Monday call series. So today is May 13th. It is now 10:31 in the morning, so we are getting rolling. How was your weekend, Aaron? Any busy activity out there with your buyers?
You know what? It was pretty good. It was pretty good. We actually left town for a couple of days to a remote cabin in Wisconsin. I thought that I was going to have no internet and no phone service. Turns out I did, and turns out it was really busy. So it's a good thing that I did. Otherwise, your phone would have been a little busier than normal.
There you go. Yeah, I had a couple
Yeah.
deals going over the weekend here as well, which we love. So without further ado, let's get rolling into today's call. So May 13th, 2024. Thanks for all who are joining us here this morning. Um, as a recap, our Mortgage Monday call series is a fireside chat with Aaron and myself. Combined, we have over 42, 43-ish different years of experience in this business. We're going to cover headlines in the marketplace, interest rate, lending product updates, marketing opportunities, and more. So always come willing to ask questions or share. Feel free to use the chat feature for any questions you may have on your mortgage scenarios or with your clients. And let's get rolling. So the NAR settlement, in case you weren't sick of hearing about it enough already, that goes live August 17th. So it's no longer July 1st. It is now August 17th. NAR has released an FAQ. We will send this out in the follow-up email. If you have questions, there's plenty of FAQ there on NAR's website. Anything you've come across recently or anything you want to add to the NAR situation, Aaron?
The only thing I'll add to that is just that it's currently going on. I feel like there's kind of two schools of thought on this. One is, hey, it's something that is going to be coming up. And one is, hey, this is going on right now. So, the comments that I'll make right now are, I feel like it's just bringing a way larger amount of transparency to what's going on. I mean, you and I have had a closing where we've seen the buyer pay all the buyer commission. I have one going on right now where we've got the buyer paying partial commission because the buyer agreement said 2.5%. They were only getting 2 from the seller, and so the buyer's paying an additional half at the closing, just like it's included as a standard part of their closing costs. And then we've seen just business as usual too. So I think it's really, it hasn't been bad or good. It's really just been different, and it's been just putting it all out into the forefront. I haven't had one time where a buyer is paying all the commission and they're getting credits, and we've had to somehow figure out how we're gonna, finagle getting all the numbers together. So I'm sure that'll happen, but I just haven't seen that yet. I have seen a big agent put a $2.25 million place up on the market. You might know who that is, and buy side commission, nada. So we are seeing it. It is going on. It's more just a matter of being aware and then, moving forward with those variables. So is that kind of where you're leaning and seeing as well? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, going back the last 20 years, right? Every deal is different. Every buyer is different. Every seller is different. And now every commission could potentially be different as well, right? So,
Yep.
so it's going to continue to evolve. Once the DOJ, approves the settlement, we do expect lending guidelines to update and kind of follow suit as well. So more to come on that down the road. Since our last Mortgage Monday call. It's actually been 3 Mondays. We do these calls, as you know, the second and fourth Monday of every month. But we had a lot of activity week before last with Fed Week, as well as the unemployment report that came out first Friday in May. So that goes back to the 3rd. Okay. We've seen rates kind of soften up as a result, which is good. We went through probably a 3-week run of rising rates with some concerns that the Fed might actually hike this past meeting, first week of May. Thankfully, they did not. So they kept rates steady. They made an announcement on QT, which is quantitative tightening, which we've talked about here before. And I'll just read you a quick little blurb here. So, in a program that began in June of 2022 and nicknamed quantitative tightening, the Fed had been allowing up to $95 billion a month in proceeds from their maturing treasuries and mortgage-backed securities to roll off each month. Okay, so basically that's been one of the things that have kept rates higher. Okay, is that the Fed is unwinding those treasuries that they've bought during COVID and before COVID, and that's kind of flooded the marketplace with supply of these mortgage bonds. When that happens, when supply is high, we'll see rates go up. Okay. The cool thing they did is they actually announced this past meeting that they're going to put a monthly cap on those treasuries to 25 billion. Okay. It used to be at 60. So they've cut the supply of those mortgage bonds by over half. We expect that to have rates kind of soften up as a result. Okay. So this is the other thing that the Fed is able to do, other than actually cutting the Fed funds rate, is reduce, the supply of those treasuries in the market. Okay. So that's a good thing. Any latest and greatest on what you're reading, Aaron, as far as the Fed activity and or future cuts?
No, not really. I'm kind of seeing that with you. Everything is in line. I think that analogy that you just gave was very similar to oil, not to get all econ 101 on this thing, but I mean, it's essentially how they can fix prices one way or the other is by, tightening that supply or opening it up. So that's one thing I will say, and this, everybody kind of, still the hot topic is what's going to happen with rates and all that good stuff. I will say this week is a huge, huge week for volatility's sake, and it could go either way. If we see, and we'll talk about it here in a minute, but if we see this inflation report come out and say that things are softening, that's going to be huge. I feel like that's really going to let a lot of the air out of the balloon. Like you had said, we had a good jobs report, and we say good. I mean, technically that's bad, right? And I don't know, not to get, super into this, and I know some of us follow this type of thing, but if you follow some of the big companies that are out there, consumer facing companies, retail, you're starting to see some decline in earnings. You're starting to see some decline in some sales. I think this is about a week and a half ago. Starbucks lost 10% in one day because they came out with earnings that basically said your casual customer had said that things are too expensive in their stores. And I feel like that's kind of turning the corner a little bit. I mean, we all know that Starbucks is freaking expensive and we all complain about it, but we all still go, or a lot of us do. But long story short, if you start to see 2 or 3, 4 or 5 other companies kind of follow suit with that, and you've got jobs slowing down, and, knock on wood, you've got a slowdown of inflation coming up. I think without the Fed even doing anything, we could be in the mid 6s again, like very shortly. And I'm a little bit more optimistic on this thing, but that's something that I could see if we see this Titanic slow down a little bit. So I don't know. I don't know if everybody agrees with me on that, but I do feel like all those things can happen, and all those things will adjust rates faster than us waiting around for the Fed to make a move. So
Yeah, absolutely. And this stuff is not linear. Okay. So we're not going to be trending up till the Fed does something and then all of a sudden it's a sea change, right? This is something where, the analogy of a rubber band that kind of gets stretched and recoil and stretched and recoiled. I mean, that's what we're seeing with rates, and that's how this stuff typically goes. Okay. To your point on unemployment, that report on May 3rd missed expectations. And it's the first one in a while that's missed expectations as far as the number of new jobless claims, as well as the new number of jobs created.
Yeah.
So as a reminder, the Fed has a dual mandate. So they're really looking at two things out there. If you know what those things are, throw them into the chat. But we've talked about them here on this call and previous calls. The first is to mitigate inflation, right? So we are getting inflation reports this week. The market is poised to react to them depending on how they look. Inflation's been sticky lately. It hasn't gone to the target of 2%, which is what they're looking for. The Fed has said they will not cut rates until we're at that 2% threshold. Okay. The other aspect that the Fed is monitoring is they want to maximize employment. Okay. So when you have a report that misses expectations like it did on the 3rd, and you have Fed meeting that week that's talking about the quantitative tightening, those two things have pushed rates in our favor. And we'll see what happens with the inflation reports this week as well. Okay. NAR settlement, Fed activity, exciting stuff here for everyone and for our clients. Okay. The other thing I just wanted to mention in the way of news articles is Realtor.com reports active inventory is up 33% year over year, and new listings are up 10.4% year over year. Okay, so going back to that analogy of the rubber band or the air kind of slowly getting let out of the balloon, that locked in effect that we're seeing, those clients that are unwilling to give up their 2.5%, 3% mortgage rate. I'm one of them. Okay. I'm sure many on this call are one of them. But we're starting to see that slowly kind of air come out of the balloon there with inventory going up, new listings going up. Over time, life is going to find a way, right? Someone's going to need more space, have a new baby, need the downsize. Life is going to take over, and the whole idea of timing the market is going to go out the window. Okay. But again, it's a long process and it's a slow air to come out of that balloon. Okay. Quick little blurb on the article. For the 25th straight week, there were more homes listed for sale versus the prior year. 25 weeks in a row, more homes on the market now as compared to a year ago. That's a good sign, which is giving home buyers more options. As mortgage rates have climbed to new 2024 highs, that goes back, a couple of weeks ago, like we said, we could see sellers adjusting their plans, since nearly 3/4 of potential sellers also plan to turn around and buy a new home. Okay. So just like we always say, the call to action, it's never too early to have a conversation with us as your lender. It's never too early to refer your buyers to us. We do a soft pull on credit. So even if this client doesn't plan on purchasing until end of the summer, the fall, next spring, never too early to introduce us, to have that pre-approval conversation. We make it high level, quick, easy, but also reliable and detailed. Never too early to make those introductions. Okay. Any tips or any feedback from you, Aaron, on new listings, getting introduced early, any of the blocking and tackling that we do here every day?
I think you covered it on that one. Anytime somebody's reaching out, a couple of the main questions I'm asking are checking an income level to see if they're eligible for anything, checking a current address to see if they're eligible for anything, and then potentially looking at a place that they're bidding on to see if that property is eligible for anything special. So just know that we're always out there trying to look and see what's available, how we can kind of cut some corners and keep this thing as lean and mean as possible. And while that's happening, feel free to lean on us for the delivery of some messages that you want to give to that buyer. I feel like sometimes leaning in on a concept or two, whether or not you want us to deliver the message or whether or not you want us to reinforce the message, especially right now, it's so important that buyers understand the state of the union, right? Nobody, if you're an agent right now, the last thing you want to be doing is working with somebody that's just dipping their toe in and trying to feel things out. It doesn't work right now. And sometimes a buyer, like, let's just take a step back for a minute. They don't understand that, people that haven't bought in the last year or two, maybe they think that they're going in and the way you start is by negotiating and going 5% under list price, and you want to wheel and deal and go back and forth a couple times, and that's how it works. And if we think prior to 2020, that's kind of how it did work, but that's changed so drastically that sometimes it takes a conversation or for a buyer to really kind of understand that. I always say they have to learn through pain sometimes. But sometimes we can avoid that by really having some rough and tough conversations up front. And, most everybody that's on the call, knows me. You guys know John. Like, we're more than happy to have that tough conversation and at least kind of reinforce what it is that's going on. And I think sometimes people need to hear that a couple times. So we just don't want them to lose out on the place that they want, and end up getting the 4th or the 5th place in line. Because then what ends up happening is they end up pulling out in the inspection period, or they decide, they get a little buyer's remorse going on. I unfortunately had a couple of those over the last week or so where, it was such a fight and such a battle to win. And then all of a sudden you win, and then you're like, I don't know, this all happened so fast. So the more we can have those conversations up front, the easier that back end is going to be. So,
Yeah, so the earlier we can get introduced and go through options, the better. I feel like it needs to be said a million times as loudly as possible from the top of the rooftops. This is a good time to buy, period. Okay. With what we expect values to do over the next year, 5 years, this is a wonderful time to buy. However, it is not the easiest time to buy. When you have low inventory, relatively high interest rates compared to the last 15 years, it's not easy. Nothing worthwhile is easy. Starting a family, starting a business, buying a home, graduating college, none of that stuff is easy. It takes education, it takes work. Okay. I do believe that the people that are purchasing homes in 2026, 27, they will have wished they purchased in 24 or 23. Okay. This market is how it's going to be for a while. So in terms of setting customer expectations, educating them on how all of the contingency aspects works with financing, appraisal, inspection, all of those things. We educate our clients so they can make the most informed decision when the decision time comes. And the reality is they may have a couple hours or maybe a full day to make a $750,000 decision for them and their family, right? Not easy. However, it is a good time to buy real estate with what we expect values to do. And I feel like that's missing from the dialogue in the media. Okay, so we're at the 20-minute mark here. Aaron did touch on checking addresses, checking income. If you have buyers, especially first-time buyers, we have more first-time buyer programs than my 20 plus years in the business that are happening right now. Okay. It's not as simple as, hey, here's my price, here's my down payment, here's what I'm looking to close, what's your rate? Okay. We need to look at where they currently live, where the property is that they're buying, what their income is. Are we using all of their income to qualify? Do we need to? Can we qualify off just the base? If so, if that puts us over under the income limit, then great, we can get them eligible for that program. But if they need all income, both borrowers, bonus, commission, that kind of stuff, then that income figure changes. Okay, so get us involved early. We're here to help. When I send out the recap, there is my petition, which I always talk about, which is stopping the trigger leads. Okay, so you may notice if a client pulls their credit, all of a sudden they're getting spam calls. We need the government to step in and stop that information being shared. That link will be in my recap email. We are 21 minutes in. Aaron, any parting thoughts here before we wrap it up here for the morning?
Yeah, we just got a note from our head of capital markets, right? Just to kind of double down on what we were talking about earlier. And I just want to read a couple of these sentences real fast here as far as volatility for this week. So we've got a string of important releases this week, starting tomorrow with Producer Price Index, followed by CPI, that's the big one, Empire Manufacturing, and retail sales on Wednesday. We'll end the week with weekly jobless claims, the Philly Fed report, and Import-Export Price Index on Thursday. So yeah, it's all over. So I guess the moral of the story is there, if you've got a buyer on the hook and something seems to be coming together, make sure they're chatting with us about that volatility. What we don't want to happen is they get, their payment estimate, they get all locked in to a property, they go under contract on Tuesday afternoon. We don't find out until Thursday. They want to lock on Friday, and the numbers are fairly different, right? In the wrong direction. It'd be nice if they're fairly different in the right direction, but the more we can monitor that, I think the better off everybody's going to be. So let's just keep it, close to the vest, as they say, fingers crossed, and hopefully get some good news to, as I say, let the air out of the balloon. So.
Yeah, and work in alignment with your lenders, right? I got a contract in the week before last going into Fed week, and the contract said closing date flexible, okay? I love that we're flexible on closing date, and I love that that probably helped the buyer secure that deal, okay? But when we're locking a rate, we need to know when it's going to be good through, because the 30-day lock is going to be different than a 60-day lock, is going to be different than a 90-day lock. Okay, so make sure you're looping your lender in those conversations, and if we have a flexible closing date, great. Let's put a target closing date June 30th or before, something like that. So at least then we know when we're locking through. Okay. Thank you for being on the call. Our next call was coming up on May 27th, 2 weeks from today. That would be the fourth Monday of the month of May. John Mooney, Guaranteed Rate Affinity, on behalf of Aaron Wise, thank you again for joining the call. We'll send out the recap, and never hesitate with any questions, scenarios that you have for us. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks.